Everyone, welcome to our podcast episode at HighLevel. We call them the Spotlight Sessions, where we bring in top leaders in the world of marketing and sales. Today, I'm excited to have with us Alec Littlejohn from Untapped Revenue joining us. And we have a jam-packed episode set up around a couple of important topics in the fitness industry for leaders, managers, and sales professionals that are serving that industry. And the topic for this episode today is how to attract new members to your fitness studio. Whether you're a small studio or a large fitness center, everything we unpack today regarding attracting new members using the studio growth framework, converting walk-ins into memberships, and automating accountability to retain clients will be discussed. And then as in this bottom of our description here, if you're not a HighLevel member yet, and you haven't experienced our software, feel free to get yourself a 30-day trial, as well as reaching out to Alec and his team with any questions that you may have on your journey. Without further ado, Alec, welcome. It's exciting to finally have you join us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. And we've been going a little back and forth, and there's
Yep.
so many things happening in the fitness industry with sales, marketing, fitness centers that are opening, closing, selling, buying, all this good stuff. Do you mind letting the audience know a little bit about your past experience in the industry and what inspired you to start up Untapped Revenue to serve the industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we started back in, 2016. I remember our first kind of into the market was Ty Lopez had a social media marketing program, and that kind of dove that kind of pushed us into the learning around kind of social media marketing. And so my business partner and I kind of just took the leap, bought Ty Lopez's program back in 2016. And then, throughout that year, we kind of learned and figured out some things about marketing. And in 2017, that's when we decided to start our business. And we actually started with a local gym. So we live in Canada, we're a Canadian company. And so we had a local gym that we, walked in the front door. We had been to the gym before. So we decided, hey, let's give this a try. Let's see if we can actually help this studio grow. And so we basically ran some ads for them and ran some marketing strategies, and their gym kind of blew up from it. And so from that point on, we kind of just dove into the world of marketing specifically for fitness studios. And it was kind of perfect because my business partner and I both love fitness. I actually went to school in the Guelph University for human kinetics. And so I've always had this desire for knowledge about the human body. And so although, marketing is a little different from, going down this route of, kinesiology, I wanted to be a vet. But there's so much interrelations with marketing and, just psychology and people. And so that's kind of what really interested me in marketing. And so after that result with that one studio, it kind of took off from there. And so from 2017 up until now, we've been working specifically with fitness studios. Man, I got to tell you though, it's been quite a journey. And I know most people in this industry throughout COVID and the pandemic, it had been quite a struggle. And for us especially, it was like we kind of had to figure out what to do. We lost, 86% of our clients at that point. And because who the heck needs a company that's supposed to walk people in your door when you don't have your door open? And so that was a pretty big struggle. But throughout kind of that struggle, we kind of learned a lot. And that's kind of when HighLevel came into the picture. Because back in the day in like 2016, 2017, I remember when we first started, we were using like Zapier, connecting Zapier to like Excel sheets, to Scipio, to MailChimp, and all these different things. So we had this like tech stack of all these different things. And then HighLevel comes around and it has literally everything that we could possibly need to run our agency and to help studios grow. And so kind of outside of the pandemic, we decided to double down. And so we basically really doubled in on HighLevel and built this kind of integrated system to really help studios grow. And that's kind of where we're at today. And so, yeah, I mean, it's been quite the journey
It
for
sounds
sure.
like it, and I think that experience that unfortunately you had to go through with COVID, fast tracked maybe a little bit of how you process things, how your customers, your fitness centers that you work with do
Definitely.
business,
Oh, yeah.
and almost reset the way that the customer journey is set up. And you've shared that you came across HighLevel, and before that you were piecing things together, just the knowledge, right? Figuring out all these mechanics and if then this, then what, and why would you even send that? So
Right.
kudos to you and your team for adapting. And I think that's the biggest part. I know you're going to go over many, many great points around, accepting new ways of positioning fitness center to potential new members, as well as maybe getting out of the comfort zone on some of those things that maybe people are used to doing it the same way over and over. So I'm excited about that. When it comes to the industry in a whole, what are some things that you're noticing within the industry that maybe are holding back a fitness center that's tuning in by chance into our episode?
That's a great question. And I think something that we've come to notice and realize in the industry is everybody is trying a cookie cutter approach. And so when it comes to attracting new people, something that we've realized is that, there's these big companies in our space, we know like Gym Launch and Loud Rumor. Obviously, I feel like most people in the high level community know who Alex Hormozy is. He obviously started Gym Launch. And what we've realized in the fitness studio space is that people want to do what everybody else is doing for the most part. And so there tends to become this like copying situation where it's like you have one studio that is running a 6-week program and you have, 5 other studios in that same kind of 10-mile radius that are running the same thing. And so something we found is that, by doing this, the issue is when obviously you're trying to attract new members and grow your studio, it's difficult to stand out when you're pretty well copying everything else. And don't get me wrong, like these 6-week programs can work and they do work. And that's obviously why a lot of studios run them. However, there's other ways to do things. And I think that's where people might get caught up in this idea that they think, they have to copy all these other people that are running these things or, listen to, certain people telling them they have to run this style of offer. And I think it's like, in business in general, right? There's a million ways to do things. And so for us, something that we've started to implement that's a little bit different is a very rigorous testing process. And we basically treat every location as its own individual kind of location. And I think this is important because every area is slightly different. Like, so I live in Canada. We're just outside of Toronto in a, small town in Oakville. It is a higher income area. And so marketing and certain offers and things like that are going to work better in this area versus, some other areas that might be pretty close. So you'd assume that, hey, what works here might work, 10 miles away when that might not be the case. And so for us, what we want to do is we actually want to test a variety of different things in each location. And so I think this is important, is treating each area and each location as an individual entity and then testing a bunch of things to figure out what the audience wants is kind of a big game changer. And I think that's really what's helped us, combining kind of all the systems and processes we now have with HighLevel, and then combining kind of this testing process has allowed us to kind of differentiate people in the market and allow them to stand out in kind of this like saturated market where everybody's running the same types of offers. And it's really helped us anyways and our partners grow their studios.
So if I was a fitness center tuning in and I said, I'm going to hire you as my coach, and I shared with you, look, I don't have that creativity. I don't know. I'm not really marketing savvy. I watch a few YouTube videos. What are some ways that somebody who's running into that stop, they can open up their mind to a style without just cookie cutter copy and pasting what they see? What is there an exercise? Is there maybe some sort of thought process that you'd recommend for someone in that case?
That's a good question. And I think it really comes down to what your audience wants. And I think people get caught up in this idea where, they think they know what's going to work. And so for your example here, if you have somebody who's not really that creative, well, the thing is you don't really have to be that creative. And so the thing that I find quite funny most of the time is we'll have videos that are pixelated, that are, pretty ugly, and they're just of people doing workouts in a class. And, the people are smiling, they're happy, but the video is not very good. And so most people would assume that that video is not going to perform, it's not going to do, very good on a marketing campaign. And in reality, we don't really have any idea unless you run it and you get feedback from the audience to tell you that it's bad. Now, so in terms of creativity, what we like to do anyways is we like to just test a whole bunch of things because you don't really know what's going to work. And so the idea is like people think, "Oh, I'm not that creative. I don't know how to, do any graphic design and stuff." The thing is some of the ugliest designs, like without any like creativity at all, do the best. And so it's just a matter of testing and figuring it out. And that's really where you're going to find what works. And so if you have a bunch of different videos that you're running, images, you try some, quirky little cartoon images. And then you figure out based on, looking at some of the data, like, hey, like, you know what, this weird, quirky cartoon image is actually doing really well. Let's try to make some variations of these. And then you basically take those styles and you run more variations of those, right? And so with somebody without creativity, I think it's at least in my mind, it's a little bit of a myth that you need it to come up with, these marketing campaigns, because to be completely honest with you, it's like a lot of the times the authentic videos of people in the studio actually doing a workout are some of the best performing things. So it's as simple as like pulling up your phone, filming what's happening in your actual studio, and then just using that as your content. It doesn't take much creativity to come up with it.
Yeah, so if I'm that fitness center or that studio that isn't recording video, that isn't gathering stories or testimonials from my members, I'm feeling I need to start there and take action on that. Whether it's a
Absolutely.
5 a.m. class, afternoon class, because if I'm taking this information you're sharing me, my audience is what matters, not my creativity.
Right.
And if my 5 a.m. audience has a different look and feel and energy level, and I want to attract more 5 a.m. crowd, I should show them the 5 a.m. crowd that I have coming Monday through Friday, if not in the weekends.
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
That's bang on. And it's like congruency is important with marketing too. It's like if you're running an ad that doesn't, meet the expectations of a person who's going to come into the studio. So let's just say you're running somebody else's video that's a different style of working out and they're expecting that, but then they come into your studio and it's completely different. Well, that's going to affect conversions and things as well. So it's important that like this authentic type of content that you're mentioning, if you want to attract this style of person, use those types of people as the avatars in the video. Like if a studio knows their ideal demographic is female between the ages of 30 and 55, that's a pretty good starting point to have, content that's around that ideal avatar. Have a bunch of 30 to 55-year-olds that are doing the classes, that are seeing changes in results, have them, have testimonial videos, things like that. And those are going to perform and find those people like that you want in your studio.
Yeah, and I think about it, if you are a franchise owner or have multiple locations, to your point, making sure that the look and feel of what they're seeing is what they're going to walk into is important as well, because you may, from the outside to inside, someone that's getting on that fitness journey is trying to see how they fit in that ambiance, that day to
Definitely.
day, that audience, that group of other fitness exercisers. So I appreciate you sharing your insight, because a lot of people that own fitness centers got into the business because of their passion, like you had
Definitely.
shared your background, and maybe they're not as passionate about marketing, promoting, sales, um, and that could be a hindrance in growing the business. With for someone that has maybe a little bit of a bigger team, maybe they have a sales team, or maybe they have a small hybrid marketing team. What are some things that they can do in addition to maybe taking videos to get more awareness out there?
That's a good question. I think like in terms of awareness, I mean, we basically look at it three ways in terms of lead flow. And so obviously to acquire new members, you need eyeballs on your studio. And so we hear this a lot where like if your location isn't very front and center, so like maybe it's around the block, it's not very visible from the streets and it's a little bit more difficult to find. And so of course there's pretty well three methods to get more, traffic and more awareness. And it's obviously one's going to be your paid ads, right? Like that's just if you want to put, gasoline on the fire, you pay to play. The second is obviously organic. So there's boots on the grounds types of marketing where you hand out flyers. You can, go to partners in terms of like if you have a fitness studio, partnering with chiropractors and other small businesses that are in your area can be a very fruitful source of leads. And then, of course, you have database reactivation. So any leads that you generated over the years that have maybe been stagnated, they haven't taken action in a little bit of while, you can basically reach out to those leads as well. And so I think like to answer your question in terms of like traffic, in my opinion, I'm obviously biased because we run a company where we run ads, but ads are the quickest way to get traffic in the door and get awareness up. Because if you think about society nowadays, it's like everybody lives on their phone. It's like it is like it's like the TV. right? It's like people are on their phone constantly. And if you look at how many hours people spend on their phone on average, it's absurd in terms of how much time. And so to be on those platforms and to pay to play is going to get you the most awareness. So regardless of if your building isn't front and center, it's like if you're on their social media, when somebody goes on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and you show up on their feed, it's like you are being known by all. And so you can reach, everybody in a location, and usually, within a 5 mile radius of a gym, I mean, you have between 50,000 to 150,000 people. You can reach those people for a pretty small budget on Facebook compared to spending, $5,000 for a billboard or any of these different kind of organic methods. And in my opinion, it's the quickest lever that you can push down on that's going to result in kind of the biggest gain in terms of awareness and traffic in a studio's doors.
And that goes back to your audience, right? Understanding your audience is key, because now if we're putting money into these paid platforms, we need to now speak to them, with what we're doing, how we're doing it, and connecting with them based on knowing I'm looking for this, and this geographically, maybe hobbies, interests, as well as maybe age range. For somebody that, and I know this comes up a lot, we're in a time where it's very do it yourself. You can jump on a platform, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, any of the major social media platforms, and press a few buttons, put a credit card in, and get it going. And some people have done that because they either have lost trust in who they've worked with in the past, or they don't want to feel obligated into a contract or some sort of a high investment requirement. Can you give any advice to somebody that maybe has lost faith in doing it themselves, although they're putting it maybe into the platform $15 a day, $30 a day or more, or they're boosting every once in a while? How does that person maybe do a reset for themselves on understanding, but also having a professional take action with them?
Yeah, I think that's a good question because there's a lot of agencies, right? And so marketing is a game that takes time to learn and figure out. And so the best way that I guess I could give advice in this situation is like if people are doing it themselves, it's usually not the best to start out, especially if you don't know what you're doing, because it just costs to make mistakes. Now, here's what I will say is Facebook, Instagram, and all these platforms for marketing is you have to think about them as a data collection platform. It's like you're paying to collect data. And so the best way to actually, run ads and handle ads is to have a testing process in place. So anybody who's looking for, somebody to outsource this or to do it themselves, there needs to be some structure to how you're testing. And so I think about it like this. So our process at Untap Revenue is we have a offer testing process, and we're basically isolating variables throughout all of our testing. And this is really important when it comes to marketing, especially for a fitness studio where, if you have 10 other locations in your area, you really need to find what's going to work so that you can outbeat your competitors on the news feed. And so there needs to be a testing process. And this is something I repeat all the time. And in order to do this, the idea here is basically isolated variable testing. And so the way we do this is we basically create ads, and we create a multitude of these ads, but everything's the exact same in the ad except one variable. So the one we always like to start with is the offer, because the offer is king. Like if the offer is really good and really appealing, you're going to get people to take action. And so if regardless of if you're running it yourself or you have somebody that's an agency doing it, what you really want to make sure is in place is some form of isolated variable testing so that after you run each campaign, you've learned something. And so what usually ends up happening if people are running it themselves or they have an agency that's doing it is it almost feels like spaghetti's being thrown on the wall and you're just trying to find something that works, but there's no direction. And so this becomes problematic because, after you've spent a few $1,000s on marketing and then all of a sudden you figure out, well, crap, I just spent $3,000. I have no return on my investment and I don't even know what was working or what didn't work. Right. And so they're lost now. They're like, what the heck do I do now? Do I keep spending money? And then they've lost this kind of, enthusiasm to even want to spend money. And so what we like to do is instead of, being at the end of this $3,000 and not having anything, it's like, okay, let's say you have spent that $3,000, but now hey, this style of creative doesn't work. This offer doesn't work. This, hook at the very beginning of the ad doesn't work. Like you start to collect all this information and it paints a picture, right? And so this iteration and constant improvement is really what's going to get you to, stand out. Because now if at the end of running a marketing campaign, I now know all this information, now I have stuff to go back to square one with. Like, I'm like, I already know this doesn't work. So now you're basically slowly finding what is working until you get to that point where you're like, hey, this campaign is actually finally working after all this time, and it doesn't feel like you're kind of lost with this unknown of like what the heck is going on in this campaign.
Yeah,
And
and
so I think that's
I
the
could
important
imagine
thing.
everyone nodding their head like, yes, I know that feeling. Like I'm all in. I'm putting the money in. I'm taking the time. What I believe I'm taking the time is to do the right steps to do my testing. But maybe
Right.
somebody's testing, three different creatives with three different captions, three different call to actions, the
Exactly.
isolated, everything's the same, just change one thing for each
Yeah.
one. And you're recommending the offer. Now, we know that results may vary and results are not
Of
guaranteed. And
course.
this is a framework that you've used with your clients and it's taken more
Exactly.
time and tweaking, but start with one and then adjust as needed.
Right.
And you hit up a big point that depending on the technical savviness of an operator, an owner, or a team, the nurture aspect, the what's next is as important as hi, I'm here. So if I start to coin, my ad that is catching the right eyes, I'm getting traffic from the ad, I'm putting the right amount of budget behind the ad. Does that have anything um, to do with the studio growth framework that we talked about prior to the episode?
Yeah, and so that's exactly right. So our studio growth framework, there's three main components of it. I'll just kind of go into them. And so
Mhm.
the first one we've kind of already been touching on, and it's in order to obviously get new members is you need leads. And so lead flow is number one. And so there's the three main components I mentioned, which is the paid, the organic, and the database reactivations. And we kind of just touched on the ad part of it, where it's like we really need to figure out the offer. And so what's really important is once you've tested offers, and I think that's the most important thing. So if anybody's starting from scratch and they want to figure out a way to, start putting some money into ads and optimizing these different components I'm mentioning, it's like figure out an offer that's really going to work, run it on your ads, put it on your website, and then run it from a reactivation. And because you've tested it already on a cold audience, it's going to work 10 times better on your website, on organic, and in your database reactivations. So that's component one. But to be completely honest, leads don't mean anything if they do not walk in the door. And so the next part of the growth framework is conversions. And that's really where the HighLevel system comes into play here, which is basically taking all of these leads and converting them, because that's really where the dollars come from. It's like getting a lead, nurturing them, and actually walking them in the door. And so part of the conversion side of it is going to be three parts. And I think the first part usually surprises people, and it's actually the website. And I think this is surprising because most people, consider, the website's like this lead mechanism, but what people don't realize is when you run ads, a lot of the times that boosts awareness. And so people who go, see your ads, not everybody opts into those ads. They actually end up going to your website, and if the website doesn't meet their expectations and it's not designed as a funnel to convert, well, you're losing those prospects. And so that'll even happen if somebody books an appointment. They book an appointment through the ads, but then they go check out your website and they're like, this doesn't seem right for me. I'm not going to go. And then they don't show up. So it's a really big conversion metric. And so that's number one is the website. Number two is reputation. And I mean, everybody who's in business understands how important your brand and your reputation is. If you have positive reviews on Google, more people are more likely to show up to your studio. If you have more Google reviews than any other fitness studio in your location, you're going to seem like the better studio. And so reputation is another metric that we obviously look at. If people go to Google to search you up and you have 2-star reviews, they're probably not going to end up coming to the studio, right? And if you have bad word of mouth, things like that, it's going to cause problems, and vice versa. If you have really good word of mouth, you're going to get more lead flow and you're going to get more conversions because these people are already warm. Now, the third part of the conversion side of it is the HighLevel system. It's the automations. It's making sure that we're replying to people within a minute. If somebody's opting into your website, opting into a Facebook ad, they're there. They're on their phone. They're on their computer right then and there, which means they're not busy. And so we want to make sure that in order to actually convert them, to get them to book an appointment, to get them to show up, we actually start that conversation. And the conversation in itself, and so this is, combining automations as well as personalization, where like, you have a real person who's really responding to people, who's asking them questions, who's, having a conversation back and forth with people, is going to help improve that. And so the automation side of it is really important for getting in touch right away, and then tracking too. Right. So one of the things I see people get wrong when it comes to, their studio and their growth is they're not tracking their numbers properly. And so I'll get on calls and I'm like, what's your cost per booking? They don't know. What's your cost per show up? They have no idea. What's the cost? What's your return on investment on your ad spend? They don't know. And so something that HighLevel does really great is you have pipelines, right? And so when a lead comes in, I can optimize and move them when they reply, which gives me my response rate. Okay. And then when they book, I can move them over into the book pipeline, and I can see statistically how many of the leads that are coming through from the website, from paid ads, are actually booking appointments, and what's that percentage. And then what we can do is we can basically start to optimize. And that's really the third level of our membership growth system, which is optimization. Like, you need to know your numbers. You need to know if you're making a return on investment. You need to know your trial to membership conversion. You need to know your cost per lead, your cost per booking, your cost per show, in order to tweak and optimize. Because if your booking rate is 5%, right, then all those leads you're getting don't mean anything, because only 5% are booking appointments. That's a problem. And so we need to basically analyze all these stats and figure out where there's a bottleneck. So if you're booking 80% of leads, but only 10% are showing up, that's the bottleneck. We need to fix why are people not showing up, and then make tweaks and adjustments. And that's really the framework. It's like, you have your leads, which is your opportunities. You have your conversions, which is obviously having the conversations, making sure the website looks good and your appearance and brand has a good reputation. Then having the big system on the back end, which is like the automations, the tracking with HighLevel. And then, of course, we need to look at that data and then optimize it. And that's really where things get good, is like, once you have a lead gen system that's constantly producing leads, you have a conversion system that's tracking data properly so you can make the proper adjustments, and then you can optimize truly. And HighLevel makes that super easy.
New
And
level, new problems, right?
exactly,
It's
that's it.
back in the day, you play the video game, you're on level one. All right, that was easy.
Right.
Level three, level four. All right,
You
we're getting
got it.
somewhere. Then you're like stuck on like
Yeah.
level 5 or 6, and you're like, man, where are the cheat codes? Where are, where's the back in the day, there was magazines for this. You go, I'm gonna go to the game store and pick up the magazine or that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And you're like, I need to get past this level. It's for someone that is tuning in and they're really, they're having that hard time. You mentioned, website, reputation, automations, and many entrepreneurs are going to go right to Google. They're going to go right to the search engine. They're maybe going to go to YouTube,
Yeah.
or social media to look up some of these searches. It can get a little overwhelming. So I want to maybe unpack, if you're okay with it, some of the signs that something might be off. So, if I'm a fitness center owner, or I'm planning on opening up here, and maybe the website that I created, or my family member created, or I just got someone from an online website for a few bucks to create it. What are some signs that this is probably not going to work as you expect it to, from maybe a desktop to mobile version? Like, what are some things to maybe look out for that you could share?
Yeah, that's a good question. And usually the answer to that is always going to be, you have to really see your data. Because it's like, I've even mentioned this with the creatives on advertising. It's like, you don't really know until you test it. Because sometimes the ugliest websites, the ugliest looking landing pages, for whatever reason, convert the best. And so, generally speaking, though, when it comes to like websites, conversions, things like that, it's like, it just needs to be optimized to get people to take the action that you want them to take. So if on that first page that people see on their mobile or their desktop app, when they go to a website or go to a landing page, it needs to show them a clear like route to take. And so if there isn't like a big button that says click here to start a trial, or like a form to fill out to start a trial, it's like, it's likely not set up for conversions. And so we have to make it extremely easy for people to do what we want them to do, which is to give us their information so we can walk them in the door and then sell them onto a membership. And so it's that's kind of the big indicator, I guess, is like, have you made it simple so that if I go to your site And let's say I'm a 90-year-old lady that's not good with tech. Can I figure out what to do? If I can, and it's that simple, then you're probably on the right track. And now you just need to track the data to then make tweaks and optimizations to actually improve it moving forward.
I agree with you. Something so basic, right? That if you're an experienced fitness center owner, or fitness studio owner, maybe for you it's to tweak the color, the font, how frequent that trial is there, what's above it, what's below it. But for someone that is not experienced and is looking to, see better results, just make it easy for someone out of town, local that just moved into the area to
Yep,
fill out a free trial, call me for more information.
exactly.
When it comes to like the mobile version of things, the phone number, the appointment bookings, any tips or recommendations around that for maybe a personal training studio that does more one-to-one training? What are your thoughts on that approach?
Yeah, in terms of the mobile for, I guess, one-on-one style, number one, it's always going to be optimized above the fold. And what that just means is like if somebody pops up the landing page, what you see right on the first kind of loading screen on your mobile is everything above the fold. And so I don't want to have to scroll down to click a button. It should be right there, clear and easy for me to, click on and opt in. Um, and yeah, so I think from like that perspective, it's like optimizing that for mobile. And then for anybody who's like one-on-one training, sorry, just remind me of the question in terms of
Like
like,
if someone is maybe small group training, they base
yeah,
everything off of a calendar versus
okay.
trials. What tips or recommendations do you have with maybe getting those appointments set up?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, if they're doing one-on-one, the biggest issue with that is usually, I mean, you're going to have no-shows regardless. And so, like trying to get somebody to book directly into a calendar, I would usually say it's like the less friction, the better. And so, if it's one-on-one and you need to get people onto, a one-on-one appointment with you, it's like make it really easy. And so, having them to fill out this big application form is adding more friction, which means you're going to get less conversions than you otherwise would if you just had it very easy and simple for somebody to book. So if the main objective is to book, in some cases you might want to try, having the button that goes directly to a booking form. And it's like they just fill out and pick the time that they want to book in, not even having an opt-in. It's just like they go straight to bookings. Um, Problem with that obviously is if people don't show up and it's a one-on-one appointment, then obviously the studio owner is waiting there for the person to show up that never shows up. And so rather than doing it right into a one-on-one appointment in the studio, in some cases it's better to do that appointment over the phone to start. And then on that phone call, you can get the confirmation, you can get the credit card, then book them into the one-on-one appointments. And that's usually the easiest way. But when it comes to like any uniqueness in terms of fitness studios, like if they're doing one-on-one, specific like Olympic athlete style fitness, it's always going to come down to making it as simple as possible. And as you start to do it, it's like you can start to add layers of friction as you start to learn more, but you always want to start it with like making it as easy as possible. And that's going to
Simplicity
kind of help.
sells.
Simplicity sells,
And
exactly.
that's amazing because sometimes we look at it from a strategy perspective, from maybe a marketing perspective. I need to get all this information. I need to
Yeah.
um, you know go through this punch list. Where if somebody that's looking to lose weight, tone and firm, get ready for a special event, get healthy or stronger from a previous injury, they just want the consultation. They want to know, how do I get there, and how do I get started? So I appreciate you
Exactly.
sharing that. And I know, you deal with hundreds of fitness owner operators throughout your day to day. And sometimes this could be like, second nature. But, the search volume on YouTube, on Google, shows that there are people always looking for new ways and basic ways to grow their fitness business. When it comes to reputation, there are stories out there of people that have no reviews because they're afraid to ask, with the potential of maybe not getting the favorable response they have. And then you have others that ask and maybe their experience wasn't great. What is your advice or best positioning on how to ask for reviews? How do you really do this the right way or close as possible to it without opening up a can of worms?
That's a good question. And I think for us, like we generally do our reputation management through HighLevel. And so one of the best things that we do with clients is we run a Google review campaign. And so to make it easy, what we do is we actually give incentive for them to take action. And so generally speaking, what we'll do is we'll send messages to all the current members, and we can get roughly like 70% of people to actually give a review. And so any studios we come across that only have like 20 reviews, but they have 150 members, it's like, that's like easy pickings. And so what you do is we basically will send emails along with text messages using the reputation system in HighLevel to basically send the Google links. And then all they have to do is click the link. And so what we do in the messaging structure is we give them something. And that makes it a lot easier for people to take that action because they're not going to be offended that you're asking for the review. They're going to feel like, oh, they're going to give me something or potentially get something. And so we'll do like a reward where it's like, hey, our goal is to get 50 reviews in the next couple days. After those 3 days, we're going to run a giveaway, and anybody who left a review is going to be part of that giveaway, and we're giving away 3 free months of our memberships. And so they're going to get something. In some cases, we'll do like a $150 Amazon gift card. And depending on obviously what the owner wants to run is what we'll use. But the better the reward, the more likely you're going to get more reviews, because who doesn't want something for free just by leaving a review for a studio that they already love and they probably would already do anyways without the gift that they're potentially going to get doing it. And so that's been the easiest, sending emails, text messages with something that incentivizes them to leave a review. And I mean, you can get pretty quick boosts in reviews and reputation on Google, which is really helpful for them.
You had hit on the dot earlier, and this just, you know, understanding that you need to do it is one thing, but kind of like where do I start is another. And I love how, with what you do for your clients and your philosophy around it is, make it fun, make it rewarding for someone to take the time out of their day to do it. Some might look at it as, well, so I have to pay these people to give me reviews. No, it's just, everyone's busy and everyone is not always as comfortable with sharing their story. So showing some gratitude of sharing their story by, rewarding them for it is always better than just saying, hey, give us a review. And giving some context around what they should share. So maybe some bullet points. We would appreciate if you would share your experience, becoming a member and experiencing our classes, or
Exactly.
with your trainer, or however you like to share to others. So thank you for that. We talk about obviously attracting new members, which you've gone in depth with. You've shared the studio growth framework that you use for your clients and that you've used for others in other trainings. And I think the biggest thing now becomes like, all right, I'm attracting the new clients, I'm getting their information, and they're walking in the door, right? They're walking in the door and they're walking in either for the 1 day pass, the 7 day pass, or maybe the 30 day, pass, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's short-term membership or student membership. I think that the next issue that people come across is converting into membership. So if they show up at 5 in the morning and there's not anyone there to really maybe, position them or go over maybe the pricing or the packaging, and there's that time gap, that becomes one thing. Or maybe in the afternoon where they say, hey, look, I'll leave my license, I'll come back afterwards to learn more, and they have to rush to leave. I believe like after they walk out that door, do you lose them forever? Like what advice or guidance do you give your clients to like get them into memberships? Because walking in is one thing, but we want them for the long term.
That's right. Conversion is everything. And so something that we do a little different, and so HighLevel allows us to do this because they have the API integrations. And so something that really helps trial the membership conversion for us is trial tracking. And so what we do is we actually integrate with softwares that our clients are using. So a lot of the times, I'll use the biggest one, which is an example, MindBody. And so a lot of studios are using MindBody. And so what we're allowed to do now is we can integrate from HighLevel to MindBody. And that not only allows us to track all the purchase history and data, but it allows us to track attendance, and it allows us to track, when somebody starts a trial, where they're at during that trial. And so something that we find that's really helpful in terms of improving trial to membership conversions is to make sure that somebody who's on trial is actually consuming the trial. So they're actually coming to classes. Because the thing is, if somebody shows up once, they pay for the trial, and then they never come back again, they're not going to sign up for a membership. And so the people who do sign up for memberships are the ones who are coming to classes multiple time. They're starting to slowly build this habit of coming to the studio. And so by systemizing that process, where let's say as soon as somebody buys a trial, they purchase that trial. As soon as they buy that trial, they obviously complete a class. They get a welcome message where it's like, hey, welcome to the studio. Thanks so much for trusting us with your health and fitness goals. We're looking forward to having you throughout this trial period. Okay. Then a couple days later, what we want to do is check in and see, do they have a class booked upcoming? If they do, we'll just reach out saying, hey, we see that you're booked in for your next class. Looking forward to seeing you. Hope you're enjoying the studio. If they don't have a class booked, and this is probably the most important one because we need to get them to consume it so that we can convert them, we basically want to reach out saying, hey, we know you don't have a class up and coming. Can I help you get booked into a class in the next couple of days? I'm happy to help out here. And just give them that option, right? Because in business in general, it's all about accountability, right? Especially when it comes to fitness studios, it's like if you can hold people accountable and get them coming to classes, they're going to stay. And this applies to like retention as well, where it's like if you can just get people attending more, that is the key to keeping them longer. And it's the same with trialers. If you can get them coming to class, enjoying the community, enjoying the service that you provide, your conversion is going to be higher. And so tracking that is really, really important. And so for us, with the HighLevel integration with the processes, it allows us to see, okay, they're 7 days into their trial, they've come to 2 classes, which is really good. So they're a little bit warmer. It's coming to the end of their trial though, so now we need to actually offer them something. And so usually we'll have some strategies in place where we'll send a message that says, hey, like we have a really special offer that we wanted to give you before the end of your trial, yada, yada, yada. Send it out to them. We usually get replies, and then that's when that conversation can start about the membership. Here's what I will say though. That's all the back end side of it though. Obviously the accountability, the messaging them, there's obviously a whole layer of things that need to happen in the studio, right? And so it's obviously extremely important that the service, the product, the environment, the trainers are top tier, right? Because that experience, that first impression where they come into a class for the first time, they feel excited that they're happy, they have that dopamine rush. It's like that needs to stay with them. That is extremely important, right? If the service sucks, then they're not going to convert. And it doesn't matter how much you keep in terms of accountability. If their first experience in the studio was poor, it's like it doesn't matter that I'm reaching out 3 days later, they didn't like it. They didn't like the class, they didn't enjoy it, so they're not going to convert. And so, of course, the product, the service is always king. And I know like that is the most important in business in general, right? It's like HighLevel, you guys are like HighLevel is that, right? It's like service above all else. And that's important across the board. And so obviously that comes first, but then having the systemization of the trial tracking and the messaging is really important. And I'll add one last point here, which is really important, is those messages that you send to trialers should not be automated. They should be systemized where you know that these messages need to be sent. And so one of the features that HighLevel has, which is fantastic, is manual actions. So these don't automatically send, but they prompt you, a list of all the different people that need a message. And the reason this is so important is because if somebody who's on trial gets a message and they know it's automated, you lost them. And so what we need to do is make sure that if I can personalize the message, I do. And so we have these messages populate in the manual action section, and it'll basically have a general template of what you should say. But the thing is, let's just say this is a message to Susie who's on trial. If I know that Susie was in class and she had a really sore shoulder, then I'm going to add that to that trial message saying, hey, Susie, I know you had a sore shoulder before the class. How is it feeling now after your class? Is there anything I can do to help? And that level of personalization goes like so far in terms of helping with conversions that by allowing like yourselves to be specific and custom to those messages that you send out, it's just going to help that trial to membership conversion on the back end.
Yeah, you as I'm thinking about if if I'm traveling or I'm moving into a new area and there's maybe 5 or 6 fitness centers near me, and let's say in my buyers, in my journey, I'm grabbing a trial here from the website, I'm stopping in person to take a peek, I'm maybe taking a tour if it's a bigger fitness center. For me, I'll give my information and I will either respond back if I'm interested, or I'll ignore it or mark it as spam if I'm not. So what you had shared with making sure your facility, your center, your staff, your people processes are top notch, because the technology only fills the gap in
Right.
between the distance of the two. So if your
Exactly.
people at the center are doing phenomenal, you have a great vibe, it's clean, it's energetic, great service, the gap is going to be much more smaller. And the technology that you're talking about with our platform, HighLevel, other platforms that other fitness centers might be using, and then you know, your experience, your process, your team, everything works together smoothly.
Right.
But it all is at that experience on site. And
Definitely.
sometimes it's a little hard, right, to control everything. And I believe that's where the feedback and maybe doing a survey and those communications become key to kind of keep your finger on the pulse. So I appreciate you digging deep into that, because sometimes fitness managers, owners, sales professionals within the industry focus on just one thing, getting people in the door. We'll get them in the door, and we'll do a text blast Tuesday at 3 o'clock to everybody, and we'll do an open house on Saturday morning. I guess what you're saying is we're beyond that now. Now people kind of caught on to the mass text, the mass email. They want to know that you have a true understanding of their goal and and what their needs are, and what you're doing and how you do it aligns with our platform. Is that sound right?
Definitely. Oh
So
yeah.
powerful, man. And that's where technology works in your favor or against you. So, if for someone that has another platform, let's just say it's outside of HighLevel, what are some pieces of information that from your experience would help you and your team for them to gather if they were to work with you? What are some things from that first visit a person?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, data is everything when it comes to, at least in our mind, it's like I need to know certain stats in order to improve anything. Because if I don't know, what the trial to membership conversion is, then it's like, how do I know that there's a problem there, right? And so, if you have 10 new people that walk in your door and only one of them are converting, it's like that's a big bottleneck, right? 10% conversion on the membership. There's an issue there with staff and whatnot. And so anybody who's using like a software that's, maybe disconnected from HighLevel or are separate altogether, it's like so long as like they have their numbers in order, that's kind of the main thing. It's like, do you know what your costs are for your marketing expenses? Do you know how much it's costing you to get them in the door? Do you know how much it costs you to actually turn them into a member? And so having those numbers allows us to have a starting point to basically be able to identify where are areas in the business that can be improved upon. And then you can double into those areas, right? Because although you could keep getting your lead cost down, it's like if that's not really the problem and the real problem is actually the sales side of it, it's like then there's a problem with service, there's a problem with the sales side of it, there's an issue somewhere else, then it doesn't matter how many people you get in the door if you have a problem somewhere else. And so the biggest thing and I think this is just in business in general, it's like you need to know your numbers and you need to know them so well that you can recite them over and over again. And there should always be goals set because, I mean, if you know that it's a booking rate problem, I mean, taking bookings from 15 to 20% up to 40 to 50% makes a massive difference. You don't change anything else except the follow-up process, and you can see massive changes in terms of growth and revenue. And so the biggest thing with any software that anybody's using is so long as you have organized data and it's accurate. Like that's the biggest thing. And if we know that, then you can obviously make plans to actually fix those issues and improve.
And sometimes we assume, right, everyone's doing that, but
Yeah,
I mean, I can imagine how many potential clients that you've met with, you've done audits with, that they don't have it. I mean, and
most
what are
don't.
some of the reasons why someone would not have it? I mean, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I think it comes down to a lot of the times it's software. So I know MindBody is an example I've already brought up. It's like a lot of people hate MindBody. And it's because it's very hard to pull your numbers. And sometimes you pull your numbers and they're not accurate. And so it makes it a lot more difficult. And I think a lot of the times it's just that, right? It's like not having things set up properly. So the data tracking might be off. It's like having, your system's a little bit more chaotic than you'd like to, which obviously leads to problems with your data. Like if your house isn't structured properly and things are all over the place, it's hard to organize and know what's going on. And so I think that's the main thing is it's like they either don't know where to find those numbers, they've never recorded them in the past, or the systems that they're probably using make it hard to do that. And I know there's a lot of them out there that are trying to simplify this thing because it is an issue. But for the most part, it's just like not knowing where to find them. Like things are too chaotic and disorganized that it's not top of mind. And to be completely honest, a lot of the times owners that I speak to are doing everything in their business. And who has time to track their numbers, very tediously when they're training classes, they're, running the marketing system, they're hiring new people, they're doing everything, right? And so it becomes difficult. And that's another reason why that can happen too, where their numbers just get lost a little bit.
Yeah, and it's you hit obviously you know what you're talking about because you do this in and out every day, all
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
with your clients. And I we only spent some time on the getting the customers, right, getting the new members, because that's typically in a fitness industry owner's mindset, like the biggest and first problem. Like, I need people in the door. I need people in the
Yeah.
door.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We need to do a billboard. We need to do a direct mail campaign. We need to go door to door and leave business
Yeah.
cards, guest passes everywhere.
Yeah.
And now with what you've shared, with being very generous, we get that part. We start patching the holes in those parts, and now we start getting people to sign up, which is, like, in our mind, that was the biggest problem. Now we have those new members. How do we keep them? Like, I
Yeah.
know what we spoke about was a lot about some reputation, some automations, the website. What is a tip or two that you could share with retaining clients?
Yep. And I think, like, to simplify, it comes down to two things realistically. One, and I've already and this applies to pretty much everything too. Like for trial to membership conversion too, it's pretty much the same. But it's attendance tracking is number one. If they're not coming to classes, they're not going to stay on board. And so I think there was a stat, I forget the gentleman who did this, but he basically did a study of 1,000 gyms. And he studied the ones that were losing clients and the ones that had the best retention rates. And so gyms that usually have a retention rate of around 95%, so a 5% churn, they're having their attendance averages 2.1 times per week. And so every single client that, is coming to at least two classes, right? And so long as you can keep people accountable and actually have them going to classes at least 2.1, if we want to do the actual stat there, at least 2.1 times a week, then the likelihood of them staying on board for long periods of time increases substantially. And so that's the biggest thing, because what usually happens when somebody cancels their membership is like they're going 2 times a week, 2 times a week, 3 times a week, 1 time a week, 1 time a week. Then they don't go at all. Then they go once, then they go none, then they go none, and then they cancel. And so you can start to see that trend. And so what you want to do is be proactive. You want to get ahead of that. And so you want to make sure that there is some form of attendance tracking. So similar to the trial tracking where you see where they are, it's like if somebody's missed 10 days of classes and they haven't been to the studio, you need to be reaching out to them, sending them a personal message, getting in touch with them, holding them accountable so that we can make sure. And I actually watched a video that Alex Ramosi did recently where he talks about this exact phenomenon here. And he basically says when it comes to like leads, follow up basically declines over time. So like after 7 days, they're usually not going to take action. When it comes to keeping customers, it's opposite. So you need to increase the amount of contact points as they get, as they stop replying. So it's like if they didn't reply to the first message, you message them 2 times the next day. If they don't message that day, the next day you message them 3 times. And you keep increasing that until you get them to respond. And that's really going to help in terms of retaining clients. And that's all going to be done with tracking, right? It's like you need to have a system that tracks that. With our API integration, we can track attendance. So if we know somebody hasn't been to class in a while, we can prompt manual actions in HighLevel that will basically allow us to send messages to members that aren't attending classes. And so that way we can get them back and into classes. And so it's really attendance tracking and accountability, to summarize that.
So I want to throw this out there because I know there's a handful that are in this scenario. They've had a fitness center in their small town or in their area with little to no competition.
Yep.
And then slowly but surely, some of the, maybe other smaller, medium-sized brands start coming in. Then the larger brands start coming in.
Yeah.
And the fitness center that I'm describing here, or the studio or the gym, is set up with paper pen. So they have like their sign-in
Yeah.
clipboard at the front desk where you put you write your name, number down. They have the key card that you swipe in, or maybe you leave your keys at the counter as your I'm here.
Yeah.
For that type of fitness center owner, how do you slowly but effectively get them to transfer over to more of a data-driven way of doing business?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially because like financially they're probably not in the greatest space, so they can't really afford marketing or these big softwares. And so to be completely honest with you, for people who are using clipboards and things like that, I still think like especially for when you're starting out, you need a foundation. And so like using softwares like HighLevel where it's like it's pretty affordable to start out to then organize everything is a good starting point. It's going to be whether it's HighLevel or some other system, it's like get one, use it, organize it, structure it so that it can be efficient. Because the hardest part about growing is kind of getting these things in place. And I think it gets even more complicated when things feel overwhelming and all over the place. And so put in the time now while things are small, right? To get that foundation in place so that as you're building, it's like you already have this thing in place that's already ready to go, that's ready to help you scale versus trying to get it in place once you have 50 members, you feel like you're all over the place, you don't know what's going on. It's like get it in place now, structure it so that you have an idea, and then you can start to build on top of that. And I mean, you can find affordable things that are going to be structural, that are not going to be pen and paper, that can kind of get you to that next level.
Alec, on sharing that.
Pleasure.
So appreciate you joining us. Alec Littlejohn from Untapped Revenue. We hope to see you again soon, and thank you.